السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الحمد لله.
Hello, greetings, ladies and gentlemen, media representatives from all channels, local and international press. Thank you for attending this press conference. We will give you a briefing, and Their Excellencies will brief the key highlights during this big event, COP16, hosted in Riyadh, the capital city. Today we will have the Executive Secretary of UNCCD, Mr. Ibrahim Thiaw, and Undersecretary, Deputy Minister of Ministry of Environment, Dr. Osama Faqih, and joining us and to explain some technical details that you should be aware of. After listening to opening remarks by Their Excellencies, we will open the floor for questions. Just some housekeeping notes for the photographers so that they don't block the way. Please go to the edges and sides of the hall so the view can be clear for the channels. Now I will move to Miss Anne so she can provide some technical details, and the mic is yours.
Thanks very much, Saad, and welcome, Dr. Sama, Mr. Chow. It is a great honor to have you here with us today. So today's session will unfold as follows. First, we'll hear remarks from Dr. Sama and Mr. Chow. Then the floor will open for questions, and finally, Saad will sum up and close the session. Over back to you, Saad.
Thank you very much, Anne. Your Excellency Mr. ثياو عفوا لنبدأ مع سيد ثياو.
Let's start with Mr. Thiaw. Now, the big numbers, the impressive numbers in this conference, more than 24,000 attendees in the blue zone, more than 35,000 in the green zone, and the presence for non-profit organizations, and the stunning presence of the number of ministers and VVIPs. What does that mean to you?
And to you, first, thank you for making this COP a truly transformative moment. I see a lot of young faces here. I'm the youngest person in this room, right? But I see a lot of young faces here, and I just wanted to remind everybody that you are being part of history. This is the first COP ever organized in the Middle East and North Africa region. What a beautiful venue that we have here, thanks to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the city of Riyadh. A number of people who have never been to Saudi Arabia were asking me whether actually the city is livable. I warned them that it could be actually 1-digit centigrade temperature, and indeed the weather is beautiful as well, so it helps a lot. This is the COP where we have by far the largest number of participants, but more importantly, the diversity of participants. It is, of course, a conference of the parties, therefore it is intergovernmental, no doubt about it. But the number of civil society organizations, indigenous peoples, farmers, pastoralists, really day-to-day people that were here, especially on People's Day, was remarkable. I don't know if you came across that young participant of the age of 8, who was the youngest speaker, really remarkable. So I once again want to thank the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for making this a particularly high moment in the life of the organization. In terms of number of participants, you heard the numbers from Saad. It's just stunning to see it in the context of the UNCCD. I have to say that as much as I like the blue zone and the fantastic facilities we have here, the only complaint I heard from anybody is to say that the rooms are air conditioned and they are too cold. That's the only complaint I heard, which is really remarkable. But as much as I like the blue zone, I actually discovered the green zone as being fascinating. So if you have not been to the green zone yet, please spend some time there, because that's where traditional knowledge meets with artificial intelligence. That's where innovation comes across with science. That's where the tradition of the Bedouins is coming to meet with the latest satellite data and the latest science. It is absolutely fascinating to see that, and to see the blue zone and the green zone next to each other is also a premiere in the life of the UNCCD. Let me come to some facts here. You heard the number of civil society participants to this conference of the parties. More than 3,500, if I remember correctly the figure, but more than 3,000 participants from civil society only. And this is critical to speak about, because as much as a conference of the parties is an intergovernmental process, it is done for people. And it has a value, only a value if it relates to people's lives, and it can contribute to changing in a positive way how we live on Earth. And I'm very proud that of the 7 thematic days we had here, we had 1 thematic day dedicated to people. It is really, I again want to thank the government of Saudi Arabia for accepting that. And it appears to be one of the most vibrant days in my view, where people sang, people coming from New Zealand, or indigenous peoples coming from Brazil, or from Africa, or indeed from the Middle East, came all together with one single message. Wherever we live, whatever you want to do as governments, we are here as the guardians, as the stewards of land, and we will be happy to contribute to your discussions. But going back home, we will continue to guard our land. That to me was absolutely remarkable. And finally, since we are still on Thursday, many people will be asking me, where are the decisions? Well, they will come. They are being negotiated. Some of them are being cleared. The closing is due for tomorrow, and decisions will come probably as of tomorrow, possibly tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon. But what I have remarked, what I have observed here in this conference of the parties is the very positive spirit of negotiators. Everybody is in good mood. Everybody is negotiating in good faith. And I'm pretty sure that the decisions that are coming here will reflect also the mood of the negotiators, and the facilities also help in having that positive mood. So thank you very much for contributing to this. And please remember this again. I'll finish with that, and you'll probably not hear from me until someone prompts me again. This COP is yours. This subject is yours. It does not belong only to officials, as much as they have a responsibility, but you have a large and huge responsibility, because those people who are not here in Riyadh will only know about this COP thanks to you. And whatever you say in this COP will be what they think about it. So it is therefore important that your opinions are your opinions. I don't want to influence anyone's opinion. But the issue of land, water, and how it interacts with people's life, on how it affects people's life positively or otherwise, on how it is connected to migration, security, peace, food security, health, human health, is absolutely critical. So please look at all the reports that were launched here. Really fantastic reports were launched here, and you have all the information that you will require. But if you need more information, please come to us as UNCCD Secretariat. We'll be happy to provide you with additional information, but please remember that this is your COP, not mine, not his. It is your COP as people of the world and as the voices of those who were not able to come here, or even were here but do not have the same audience as you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Dr. Osama من
Dr. Osama, it's noteworthy that the conference is a critical point, a transformation in the history of the COP, and this is a historic moment indeed. If you start your remarks from this point, and then we can move to the questions later. Thank you so much. Indeed.
Historical turning point in the journey of this important convention, because never, we had this cup has been hosted in the Middle East, one of the most. So this is the first. Taban is the first in Saudi Arabia. It's the first in the Middle East, and also, of course, it's the first in its size and scale. We heard the executive secretary talk about the number of people registered and participated. It's the first time we have a green zone. And that has a purpose, because it's been always in the blue zone, where we have the official delegates and the official matters that have been discussed. But however, we cannot achieve the convention objective, which is really about land and land degradation, without the involvement of all stakeholders. Again, let's go back to the basics. This convention is about the land, and when humans, when they started really experiences before the technology, before anything, we rely on the land, on our food to raise our cattle and everything. And now we are still now in our modern cities rely on the land. Maybe somebody else is managing the farm. Maybe the farms are mechanized and industrialized farms, but the food still come from the farm. And still the animals still graze. It's not anymore we city dwellers are raising the animals, but there are about 500 million people in the world who are raising the animals. We depend on them, on the food security and our clothes, and they also depended for their livelihood. And we have 1 billion farmers that represent more than 70% of the global agriculture production. Their livelihood depends on it, but our livelihood depends on it too. And this convention is centered there. And that's why this is very important. And of course, biodiversity, water security, all of this. And this is the first time this convention is being really talking about this whole topic in a more comprehensive way. It's not only the numbers, it's the content as well. We had around 400 events in the blue zone and around 220 events in the green zone. So each event is a panel discussion. You have 4 or 5 speakers, technical specialists representing international organization, representing business, representing science and innovation, representing the youth and the indigenous people. So really the content has been extremely rich, and we have seen really discussions of so many matters we have never seen before. In the last COP we had 120 events, just for you to compare. We have now 620 events. So really the scale. And it's all about substance, about matters, and about inclusion, because we have been seeing, all stakeholders coming in record numbers. The executive secretary talked about the indigenous people and the NGOs. Around 3,000 of them has been here, and they have been really engaged in extremely constructive discussions and being part of the solution and crafting the future. But the business community has been fully engaged. We We had the Business and Finance Day. We had major announcement, billions of dollars, you know. So far we counted more than $12 billion of pledges for drought and land degradation, and more are coming. And actually, even those who did not pledge are planning to make announcement. And we have engaged them, and they are really see that. And this is also a first. We haven't had the business community engaged with this really intensity. The innovators, we had an innovation day in the blue zone, but we had an innovation week in the green zone. So we have these two really, the two zones were like the two wings of the same bird. I mean, it's really elevated the convention by having those two really elements, the blue zone and the green zone, each really creating a platform for certain constituency and really creating a very comprehensive and inclusive umbrella to bring people together. So, and I think this COP was about inclusivity, about comprehensiveness in the agenda, about participation, but also it is about action. This is the COP of action. This is another. We have had a lot of decisions, and the negotiators have been negotiating for the last 15 COPs, and they have a lot of decisions. But no matter what you negotiate, you need to execute. You need to have the elements to implement on the ground. And we have seen this happening. Of course, Saudi Arabia started this by launching Riyadh Global Drought Resilience Partnership and the international initiative on early warning of dust and sandstorm, and we are working with others on the business for land, also initiative as well to be launched. However, despite the fact these are global initiatives with great potential for creating a difference on the ground. If we take the Riyadh Global Drought Resilience, it targets 80 most vulnerable countries. Why is that? Because 85% of the people impacted with drought, which is 1.8 billion people, live in those countries. And also, 80% of the drought impact comes to farming communities. So really, this initiative which bring governments, bring international organization, bring the business community, and we saw the business community, how they supported the initiative very strongly, and we see organization. It's by itself, it's a major outcome. And if we didn't have any outcome except this one, that has been really something unparalleled, because there is nothing parallel to this initiative. And the importance of this initiative and its impact in the drought resilience space is huge. But nevertheless, we have seen countries coming, private sector coming. We have tens and tens of initiatives under the Riyadh Action Agenda. So really, this COP is about action. How can we translate objectives and ambitions into actions? And we have seen the action agenda really coming really very strongly. And that's why we consider it a historical turning point, because it's really action on the ground that makes the difference. It is really engagement is make the difference. The stakeholders make the difference. And I think also awareness. I think global awareness. This COP is our land, our future. This has been really the focus. And because of this COP, we worked with the United Nations Environmental Programme in preparation for the COP to make the World Environment Day our land, our future. So land has been central, not only in these 2 weeks in December, for the whole year, our land, our future has been the dominant theme in the whole world. And I'm very proud, back in June, we had 3,940 events about land globally, from Australia and Beijing in the east to Frankfurt and to Vancouver and San Francisco and Los Angeles to the west. The whole world was really making events about land and how we protect land. And the record for the World Environment Day was 1,900 events in the previous, that was the highest. So that is also another record. And so it's a historical, really, turning point in our view to land and how we relate to land and our understanding to land degradation and our understanding to drought and what is the impact of drought locally and globally. So really, again, and I think I can go on and really mentioning reasons why this COP is really a historical turning point, and we will always look back. When I say we, the global community, will always look back to COP16 and remember this was a turning point in our relation to land.
The floor now, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Saad. The floor will be open for questions. Conference footage will be made available after this conference, should you wish to have it. Just ping either Yazan or I, and we'll be sure to send it to you. And before you pose your question, if you could please state your name, your media outlet, and the spokesperson that you're directing your question at. Floor is all yours. Maybe if we can start with Ashok Bloomberg.
Can I have the mic here, please?
Hello, my name is Asim Baini. I'm from Sharq Bloomberg. I would like to thank Your Excellency for this invitation for the COP from the first day. And we hope as a media, as you said, Your Excellency, that we played the role that we have to play to deliver the messages delivered from COP. I would like to know, Your Excellency, Doctor, about what are the main initiatives that we're gonna work on it, for example, for the coming year or the coming years in general. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think really Saudi Arabia relation to the land and to the COP did not start today, although our engagement has been intensified a lot and amplified a lot. So Saudi Arabia already started a journey nationally with the Saudi Green Initiative to restore 40 million hectares, regionally with the Middle East Green Initiative to restore 200 million hectares in the region from Central Asia, West Asia, North Africa, and Sub-Saharan Africa, where we have now 30 regional members, both from Asia, Arabic countries, and African countries, and more actually countries are approaching, even from outside the Middle East region, trying to join the initiative. And of course, during the COP, we announced Riyadh Global Drought Resilience Partnership, which is really to really shift from reactive response to drought after it happens to a more proactive readiness to drought before it happens, through early warning, through capacity building, knowledge sharing, through drought resilience crops, through investment into water infrastructure, through drought insurance for farmers. Also, we had the early warning initiative on dust and sandstorm, which is really will bring the WMO, the World Meteorology Organization, and the 4 regional centers for sand and dust storms to work together, which is, we have the center in the United States and in Europe and in Asia and China, and we are very proud that the 4th center here is in Saudi Arabia to really provide better early warning from sand and dust storm, which impact hundreds of millions of people. We also now, we are having now an initiative to be an umbrella for the business engagement, business for land initiative to really, we are working toward launching this. And also we have many other initiatives, for example, IDRO, the International Drought Observatory, which is launched by IDRA, the International Drought Alliance, which is we are a proud member of some of the more recent, and we have about 60 countries who are member in the International Drought Alliance. And the International Drought Observatory launched now in this COP will be using artificial intelligence to really help countries to be more prepared for drought, identifying drought vulnerable regions and using these technologies, how to really predict drought and prepare for drought. We have also seen the initiative launched by United States on soil, which is called the VAX, which is Virtual Adapted Crops and Soil, which is basically synergized relation between crop and soil, and how can you have this really optimum utilization. And we have, I can go on there, I cannot remember, there are so many initiatives. There is the initiative on drought insurance for farmers by ISDB. There are UNDP launched 6 or 7 initiatives, like a fund for land degradation and land restoration. There is, then the list go on, and I think, and I asked my team to go really and inventory, and I think it's not, again, the number is large. It's the responsiveness for the call, for COP16, where all these stakeholders are coming not only to participate, but also to announce initiatives. So again, we will have a presidency until the COP20 in 2026, COP17 in Mongolia, and we will be continue to engage to maintain the momentum, to really keep the momentum until COP17 and beyond, to achieve the objectives. And again, as the Executive Secretary, in addition to the participation in the events, which is really knowledge sharing, and a huge, immense value comes from learning from each other and propagating those good practices. And in addition to the initiatives that I listed, some of them, we also have our delegates, the official delegates, working on so many decisions, really to really uplift and strengthen our global action on land degradation, desertification, and drought. Thank you.
I think we have you, Ms. Yu from China Climate Home.
You, I'd like to ask a question on behalf of Climate Home News. I understand that there are discussions surrounding a possible protocol for combating drought in this COP16. So I have 2 questions for both Mr. Tiao and Dr. Osama. The first question is, how has the negotiation progressed regarding this possible protocol? Are there any sticking points? The second question is, why a protocol for drought? Why not land degradation or desertification, or the 3 altogether? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think there's a growing understanding in the world that droughts are affecting our life like never before. There is also a very clear understanding now that droughts affect more than just the rural communities that are totally dependent on the land. Droughts affect our economies, it affects our health, it affects our supply chains, the price of food, the availability of water. It kills people and animals and ecosystems. So parties of the UNCCD agreed already at the last conference of the parties to establish an intergovernmental working group on drought to explore options on how to address the phenomenon of drought, on how to mitigate its impact on people, communities, and ecosystems and economies. That intergovernmental working group came produced a report which is tabled to this Conference of the Parties with 7 options. So parties were met to review these 7 options. One of the options is indeed protocol, but it is not the only option. And negotiations are going on. I cannot tell you as of today whether it will be a protocol or not, but there is clearly an agreement amongst parties that we need to do something big and meaningful to turn the tide on a slow onset disaster which is affecting the world. So the discussions are now turning about what regime do we need. So I cannot tell you now because negotiations are still going on, so I don't know what will be the outcome of that, whether it is option A or B, but negotiations are going on, and hopefully by tomorrow you will see the smoke. And the white smoke, I hope.
Dr. Osama?
And I think just the next part, she said, why only drought, why not? Because we already have, an umbrella for land degradation. We have land degradation neutrality targets, which is very well defined. We have, it is included in the Sustainability Development Goals, Goal 15.3. So really it is tracked into under two different umbrella, under the Sustainable Development and under the Convention, and many countries already announced targets under the Convention. Even those who did not announce under the Convention, they have their own national target as well. Many of them also have national targets. And we talked about the land degradation neutrality and the need for, that's why, but what we need, what we lack was the drought, some kind of an instrument for drought.
We'll take the gentleman on the 3rd row, and then we'll go to AFB on the 1st row.
السلام عليكم عبد الله الروقي من صحيفة اقتصادية.
On you from economical journalist. My question is in the Arabic language to Mr. Tiao. 30 years ago, there was a convention that related to the combating desertification. 30 years later, and we do not have any results. What about tomorrow? Is there any announcement how you are going to assure and guarantee the activation of this report? And it had to be activated, and it's not the same in 1949. What happened in that years? And my second question is, we have some crises related to the civilization and resilience dams in Ethiopia, Egypt. How about your activation? How to affect those degradation lands and also infrastructure and the health of people?
Very good question. Next question.
سؤال عظيم.
In 1992, in Rio de Janeiro, nations of the United Nations, members of the United Nations, agreed to negotiate 3 treaties, one on biodiversity, one on climate, and one on desertification. These are legally binding treaties. They are treaties, and the purpose of a treaty is to help countries from around the world come together in a platform like this to discuss what is connecting Samoa in the Pacific Islands to Panama in Latin America, to Palestine in the Middle East, or to Malawi in Africa. They have something in common, and which only through negotiations and agreements amongst themselves they could resolve. Each country has sovereignty over its land, but there is something bigger that we share. And they also recognize the interconnectedness between these nations. So any activity that you can have in South Africa could actually have an impact in Saudi Arabia, because some of the food you eat here is not produced in Saudi Arabia. Most likely, some of the tea you drink is not necessarily grown in the country where you live. So therefore, it is important to recognize the importance of these treaties, because they are unique. There is no other global treaty in the world that is discussing the complexities of land, food, rangelands, cotton production, the air we breathe, the water we drink, and of course the emissions we also have in the atmosphere, because land use is the second largest emitter after energy in terms of climate. So this is what the global treaty is about. The global treaty is also instigate science and more knowledge from around the world, so as to see how all of these issues are interconnected. In 1992, for example, when the convention was negotiated and established later in 94, we did not have much information about the impact of sand and dust storms that are happening probably here from the Middle East, and how they are impacting the Amazon forest. We did not have much science. Now we know. We did not have much information about the impact of land degradation on the health of our people, of our children, or babies that are unborn as of yet in the wombs of their mothers. Now we have more science. We did not have much information about the quality of the soil and the land we have, and the nutrients we have in our food. You can have tomato is not equal to tomato. Orange is not equal to orange, depending on where it is grown and the nutrients that it contains. So now we have more science connecting all of that. So this is what the global treaty is about. It has achieved a lot, if you want to have my opinion, in terms of raising awareness. Look at here, we have how many journalists in this room? That did not happen in 92. It has raised awareness in terms of political leaders in the world, so as to understand and take action at the national level. Every country, again, is sovereign. No country can dictate to another country what they should do, but if they have something in common. We still have a lot of challenges to resolve as global treaty, not least to convince leaders of the world to reduce, if not stop, environmentally harmful subsidies that are being used at the moment and that are contributing to land degradation. That is yet to be achieved, and I hope it will be discussed in the coming COPs. We still have a lot of decisions that we expect, we hope, will be made by parties as to reduce the gap in terms of land ownership between men and women in the world, because only 13% of the agricultural land in the world is owned by women, and yet they produce 80% of the food in developing countries. There's a gap that needs to be resolved. And that, again, cannot be resolved by one country individually. It has to require global decisions, and it is in the UNCCD COPs, not to anywhere else, that decisions related to droughts are being discussed and can be adopted, not in New York or in Geneva or anywhere else. It will be in the context of a UNCCD COP. So that is what the global treaty is about. It is not. Now, there are many other UN agencies that are equipped, qualified, and have capacities on the ground to help implement decisions that are being adopted by conferences of the parties, but not the secretariats of the conventions that do not have that mandate, and who have the mandate and have the power that no other agency has, is to bring everybody around the table to have discussions. I don't know if I make sense to you in terms of what is the role of a global treaty compared to what the World Bank or the United Nations Development Program or the United Nations Environment Program or the World Health Organization or whatever can do in order to complement or support or provide science in many cases to parties when they meet so to help them make informed decisions. You talked about resilience or dams. This is exactly one of the issues that are being discussed today, is to say, how can we agree amongst ourselves to see how we can produce twice as much food as of today by 2050 to feed the growing population without necessarily depleting the water resources in the world. How many large dams do we need? I don't know. We certainly need more small dams than large. Because you may be aware of the World Commission on Dams report, which basically said that we have to be careful about large dams. Certainly, on the river dams or small dams are much more beneficial because they have less impact on people and on the environment. So it is in this is a legislative room, so if I can express myself in that way, like a parliament, as opposed to a government that is the executive arm of an institution, and the executive arm in the United Nations are the agencies. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chow. If we could please give the mic to AFP on the first row. Thanks.
Hi, thank you. Robbie Corey Boulay with AFP. Thank you for the briefing. My question is for the Executive Secretary. You said before the talks began that you wanted one of the outcomes to be a bold decision on how to deal with drought. If it doesn't end up being a binding protocol, will that be a disappointment for you? And secondly, apart from the various side pledges that have been announced, what kind of funding pledges are you expecting via the UNCCD itself to come out of these talks? Yeah, apart from the side pledges that have been announced, what kind of funding pledges are you expecting to come via the UNCCD mechanism itself from these talks? Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know what happens today, but we seem to have flying zones. They're celebrating? Ah, okay. So congratulations to Saudi Arabia for celebrating 2034. And 2030, World Expo, yeah. The bold decision, I am still hopeful that they will have a bold decision. I did not mean a protocol, by the way. Bold decision is a bold decision that will be transformative, that will be providing a clear guidance to governments, because they have to translate that global decision into national decisions, that will provide clear guidance to private sector, so as to help them understand the impact that drought may have on their business, therefore affecting the world economy. That will help civil society organizations and all the actors. So I'm still hopeful that we will have a bold decision. I don't know whether it will be legally binding or not legally binding. That again is, the jury is out, but it is critical that at the end, I mean, my view, now I hope I will not be disappointed. We'll talk about it maybe after the closing of the Conference of the Parties. But it is clear that there is high expectation on parties to come up with a transformative decision. A decision that goes beyond just noting or acknowledging, but really helping provide the world with the guidance that they need. There are lots of people out there that are not necessarily in the negotiations rooms or have not even been to Riyadh, whose life and livelihoods depend largely on the decisions that will be made here. Because again, it's the legislative room for decisions related to land and drought. So I'll talk to you after COP, and then we can assess together. The funding that is needed is huge. You heard our report from the finance report, that is the needs are actually $1 billion per day to restore degraded land. Now, don't consider this as grants or charity. We are talking about investments that are needed both by the public, but mostly by the private sector to generate the income. If the land is, or natural capital is providing us with 50% of the GDP, it is not small. And if we need to produce twice as much food as of today by 2050, that is not small as a business, but it is only compatible. We can only achieve that if we invest in our own land in order to sustain our the productivity and sustain our business. So it is therefore we are talking about investments. We are talking about regulations that should come from governments to help the private sector invest and secure their investments. We are talking about investment that can be stress tested in order to be resistant to shocks like droughts or wildfires, or so that our investments are not wiped out by one single event. So that is what we are talking about in terms of investments. However, the Riyadh Drought Resilience Partnership is not a financing, but a funding. It's not only financing. I make a difference between these two terms. But the 80 poorest countries in the world who bear 85% of the brunt due to drought, they need support. I myself come from a small village. I was born in a village, not in Lights. And I know how vulnerable my community is when drought hits. And I know how vulnerable my community was when the first drought hit. I was only 12 years old, and I see a transformed ecosystem. And all of a sudden, people could not produce anymore, no food. Their animals died because they were pastoralists, or they were fishermen, they could not fish anymore. So the natural capital is the only asset. And when there is no production, people have to flee or they die. So, and that is what drought is doing, is to defranchise families and create real shocks for people who have to flee and they never come back because the conditions are not met yet. So that is really what we are talking about in terms of the Riyadh Drought Resilience Partnership, is to assist those poor countries who are so vulnerable that no insurance company is willing to give them the chance to be covered by any insurance. So the Riyadh Drought Partnership is trying to fill that gap as well. And moving from humanitarian aid and saving lives, which is really what we have been doing anytime drought hits, to early warnings and to preparedness in order to build a more resilient economy, more resilient societies, and save money. Honestly, any dollar you invest on preparedness saves you $10. So I think it is what we are talking about in terms of funding. Thank you.
I'm afraid we only have time for one more question, and I will hand the floor to this lady.
My question is Urmi Goswami from the Economic Times. So my question is for the Executive Secretary. We've spoken about drought, we've spoken about funding. I was wondering if you could give us a sense of where the discussions on the UNCCD's budget are. The world expects the UNCCD to do much more than it's doing, but you haven't had a growth in budget. And if you could give us a sense of what the situation's like, what your expectation is, and where we are. Thank you.
It is being negotiated. As Executive Secretary, I'm a civil servant, and I'm paid by my parties. And the Secretariat, as small as it is also paid by the parties to organize these events. So the signal we sent to our parties is to say, the Secretariat you had 10 years ago, 15 years ago, with a budget that has remained the same for 10 years without any increase, is not viable anymore with the ambitions and the mandates you are giving to us. So it is being negotiated, and I hope, again, I will have white smoke out of that. If not, maybe with AFP, we will see how many disappointments we will have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jiao. Thank you, Dr. Salma. This is all the time we have for questions today, but feel free to join us for a briefing tomorrow. Details will follow to learn about whether or not we saw white smoke and to hear more from our spokespeople on the outcomes. I will now hand over to my co-moderator, Saad, to close us off. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anne. شكرا لكم جميعا. شكرا لأصحاب السعادة. سعادة الدكتور.
Much for your excellency. Thank you so much for Dr. Osama, the Deputy Minister of the MIWA, Ministry of Environment and Water Agriculture. Thank you so much, Mr. Ibrahim Thiaw, and the executive secretary of the convention of the UNCCD. I would like to remind you tomorrow you have an opportunity at 11 a.m. to meet their excellencies to have a look about the last updates of the outcomes and the key highlights of our conference. I would like to as well invite you to take the lunch at 2 p.m. tomorrow. Thank you so much. Your highly attention much appreciated.